Despite there being an enormous amount of post and mid-credit scenes out there, it's actually surprising how few of them prove to be important in the long run. The majority of these tags usually end up being pointless throwaway gags, teases for sequels that never materialize, or teases for sequels that do materialize but end up being pretty average. Franchises like the Marvel Cinematic Universe have taught us to wait through the credits in anticipation of something exciting at the end, but half the time, these closing scenes never really get a deserving payoff further down the line. Or they simply don't exist at all. Looking at you, Mr. Endgame. So when one of them does lead to something great, whether that's an awesome sequel, a memorable moment, or even an entire franchise, it sets a good example of the potential of these closing stingers. They can be used to set up awesome future events and storylines, giving us one last after credits taste of where the series is headed in future installments. So with that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, back from wondering if we did a post-credit scene to this video, if anyone would stick around to watch it, to bring you 8 post-credit movie scenes that actually led to something awesome. Number 8, The Bride in Black, Insidious. The horror genre isn't known for its post-credit scenes, so a lot of them go unnoticed. On that note, the quick tag at the end of Insidious is one that a lot of people won't have seen, and yet while it won't blow your mind or anything, it serves to provide one final scare that teases the Bride in Black's expanded role in Insidious Chapter 2. At the end of the first film, we learn that Josh has been possessed by the ghostly entity, the Bride in Black, a pasty-faced demon with an embarrassing habit for murder. This all happens in the film, but after the credits roll, the bride appears once more. Here we're treated to a quick shot of the character smiling creepily at the camera before she blows out a candle and the film cuts to black. It's hardly a substantial scene, but thanks to some truly hair-raising music, it's unsettling as hell, and will leave the image of that pale face and black dead eyes seared into your brain. Number 7, Cable is Coming, Deadpool. Spoofing a similar scene at the end of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Deadpool's after credits tag is split into 2 halves. The first half is just a gag, with Deadpool telling the audience to go home because the film is over, before quipping about Samuel L. Jackson's role as Nick Fury in the MCU. The second half is a bit more substantial, with the character informing us that the sequel to his movie will feature Cable. At the same time, considering the sarcastic humour the Deadpool franchise is built on, it wasn't clear if this was just another joke, but Cable actually did show up in last year's Deadpool 2, played by Josh Brolin. As the sequel is very much a worthy follow-up to the original, with Cable proving both a powerful antagonist for Deadpool to face and later a useful ally to help him with his mission, the hard-edged badassery Brolin brought to the role was a sight to behold, and with his awesome musical themes and believable motivations, he managed to easily surpass the first film's main bad guy, Ajax. Number 6, The Virus Spreads, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Rise of the Planet of the Apes had no right to be as good as it was, but thanks to some stellar visual effects and a great performance by Andy Serkis, it successfully presented the apes as victims, which made for a much more morally complex tale than if they were just jabbering barbarians. The film's mid-credits scene follows a pilot who is unknowingly infected with the ALZ-113 virus, which kills people it comes into contact with, as he heads into work. Of course, since he has to fly around the world and visit all sorts of different countries, he takes the virus with him, which causes it to spread until it begins to decimate humanity. The scene concludes with a shot of an airport departure board, and then the rest of the credits feature a series of lines representing the virus slowly weaving their way around the planet. The scene directly set up 2 incredible sequels that both topped the original. These movies take place in the post-apocalyptic world created by the spread of the ALZ-113 virus, making Rise's mid-credit sequence an important part of the series' overarching story. Number 5, Andy Shoots Chucky, Curse of Chucky. The Child's Play franchise is by no means cinematic gold, but it's managed to deliver a consistently entertaining stream of movies for several decades now, with only a couple of true low points. Curse of Chucky, the 5th sequel, is one of the better films in the series, a funny, bloody good ride from start to end, and to top it all off, it has a great post-credits scene that leads into the equally solid sequel, Cult of Chucky. The final stinger shows an unnamed character receiving a large package, which he rests on a table before taking a phone call. As Chucky begins to cut his way out of this package, the camera pans to some photographs which reveal that the unnamed character is Andy Barclay, who's had a recurring role in the franchise since the very first film. Andy's history with Chucky means that he's ready for the killer doll this time, and just as Chucky bursts out of the box with a sinister smile on his face, Andy points a gun at his head and pulls the trigger. It of course led into Cult of Chucky and gave it a great opportunity to take the Child's Play formula in a fresh and exciting direction. In the film, it's revealed that Andy has been torturing Chucky's disembodied head, which, to be fair, is probably deserved. Number 4. Shaw makes his move, Fast and Furious 6. Just like the Chucky series, the Fast and Furious movies have remained strong, even numerous entries deep, with Fast 5 marking a turning point for the franchise that saw it become a high-octane action bonanza and a major player at the box office. Fast and Furious 6 continued that trend, making even more money than its predecessor and using a mid-credits scene to tease Furious 7, which ultimately ended up being the best movie in the series to date, as well as the highest grossing. The scene takes place during the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift and shows several cars having a street race through the titular city. Han is behind the wheel of one of these cars, and shortly after he pulls a slick turn through a crowded street, his vehicle is rammed from the side, resulting in a crash that sends his car up in a ball of flame. The man who caused the crash? Deckard Shaw, played by Jason Statham. Shaw would go on to be the main villain in Furious 7 before becoming a heroic figure in The Fate of the Furious and the upcoming Hobbs and Shaw. Statham is an absolute joy to watch in the role, with his cocky attitude and no-nonsense approach to basically everything, making him one of the best characters in the series. Number 3. Thanos takes the Gauntlet, Avengers Age of Ultron. As mentioned in the introduction, a lot of movie post-credit scenes are quite throwaway, and the MCU's suite of stingers is no exception. Guardians of the Galaxy's Howard the Duck, Thor the Dark World's Thor/Jane Kiss, and Spider-Man Homecoming's Patience gag, among others, ultimately served no purpose at all other than to fill a seemingly obligatory after-credits slot. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, the MCU has had its fair share of hugely important post and mid-credits tags, scenes that have rewarded loyal viewers by delivering a massive payoff further down the line. Avengers Age of Ultron is the perfect example of this, since it led directly to the universe-altering events of the fantastic Avengers Infinity War. The quick scene shows the mighty Thanos picking up the Infinity Gauntlet before proclaiming that it's time he took matters into his own hands. Those matters are of course the Infinity Stones, and as we saw last year, he managed to gather them all up, slot them in the gauntlet, and snap half the life of the universe away into a pile of dust. This scene is far from the MCU's greatest, but thanks to the events of Infinity War, it now carries a whole lot more weight and importance. Knowing the damage that Thanos is able to inflict with that glove has retroactively made that moment even more powerful. Number 2. Magneto and Xavier recruit Logan, the Wolverine. The Wolverine's third act boss battle is easily its weakest part, making the movie end on a bit of a dumb note. Thankfully, its mid-credits scene kicks all kinds of ass, which does go some way towards saving the movie from its mediocre final moments. The scene starts with Logan waiting in line to pass through some metal detectors at an airport before he notices something unusual. Certain metal objects in his vicinity are being disturbed by something. He draws his claws and spins around, where he's greeted by Magneto, played once again by Ian McKellen. Obviously, the two are hardly the best of mates, so in order to gain Logan's trust, Magneto cues up Professor X, the great Patrick Stewart, to enter the scene. The two elder mutants need Logan's help to combat a developing threat, which is a direct tease to the excellent X-Men Days of Future Past, which saw mutant kind brought to the brink of extinction by an army of robotic sentinels. Not only is the scene great in itself, seeing McKellen and Stewart reprise their iconic roles after so many years was a delight, and it also teased the best X-Men movie to date, Days of Future Past, unless you count Logan. In that case, it's the second best X-Men movie. You get the point. Number 1. The Avengers Initiative, Iron Man. A somewhat inevitable number 1 entry, this tag is not only responsible for the post-credits scene craze we seem to be living in right now, but it marked the first time we heard Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury mention the Avengers Initiative. So, in a way, this short moment acts as a foundation for the entirety of the MCU, and without it, the franchise might not be the enormous success it is today. It's nothing fancy, extravagant, or showy, it's just a quick exchange between Fury and Tony Stark, with the former telling the latter he's here to discuss a potential superhero team-up. From here, we saw a Thor movie, a Hulk movie, a Captain America movie, a second Iron Man movie, before the original 6 Avengers assembled to create the masterpiece that is 2012's Avengers. The MCU turns 11 years old this year, but even in decades from now, we'll all be able to look back and point to this scene as the moment where it all truly began. Oh, I didn't see you there. Welcome to the post-credits scene. Why don't you help yourself to a like or a subscribe? Make yourself at home and prepare for What Culture Infinity War, where Simon Miller gathers 6 stones from each of the What Culture channels and finally defeats the evil of Watch Mojo, coming to theaters in 2028.